Welcome to Elite Rugby S&C podcast, the best podcast talking all things rugby and strength and conditioning. At Elite Rugby S&C, we provide athletes with strength and conditioning programs that provides you with everything you need to become a beast and take your game to the next level. No matter what stage of the year or season, Elite Rugby S&C has a program for you. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby S&C. Also, sign up to our newsletter and receive free bonus content each and every single week. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby S&C today. Today, former professional rugby league athlete turned professional S&C coach Andrew Heffernan joins me on the podcast. Andrew played for the Canberra Raiders in the under-20s competition and Auckland Nines. He went on to sign with the Penrith Panthers, where he played in the New South Wales Cup. Andrew left Penrith to go overseas and play in the Super League in the United Kingdom for the Hull Kingston Rovers. Andrew is now a Level 3 Elite S&C coach working full-time at the AS, working in the basketball program, while also working with other athletes and sports as well. On this episode, Andrew shares his rugby league journey and how he got to the professional level, which he goes into great depth about, which is great. Andrew talks about one of the hardest decisions he had to make, retiring from rugby league due to multiple concussions. We discuss all things S&C. Andrew talks about how during his playing years he was also learning how to become an S&C coach, which led to him coaching junior level athletes while playing professional rugby league. And Andrew also answers the Triple H, so a hardship, hero and highlight of his rugby league career and coaching career as well. I really appreciate Andrew taking time out to speak with me today. This was a fantastic episode, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. Enjoy! So, g'day, Andrew. How are you?
Good, mate. Going well. How about yourself?
Yeah, going well, thanks. So, how's life going at the moment, and how's your coaching going?
Yeah, no, life's pretty good. I guess, personally, I'm about sort of just under 2 months away from a wedding with my fiance. So that's exciting. It's kind of been a bit over 18 months in the works. And so a lot of that stuff happening in the background, I guess, which is great. And last 3 months, I've sort of moved into a new role at the AIS, working with the women's COE, so within basketball, after previously being involved with volleyball and tennis with their sort of Australian sort of programs. So all going really well. And for me, it's a time where I guess in that inventory stage of working with a new program, you're kind of just getting your head around, I guess, cultural dynamics and how you can value add to a program. I think it's a big part. Obviously, the delivering from an S&C point of view and coaching is what kind of comes natural to us. But I guess understanding the group that you're working with for me is so key. So I'm really loving that at the moment, getting to work with a new group. I've always enjoyed this sort of development age, as much as I've enjoyed the top end and the elite end, working with those development athletes who are on the cusp of going into the next stage of their career, being a part of, I guess, building those high performance habits and building the athlete before they go off and the focus turns to, I guess, results and performance is a really nice place to sort of sit and to hopefully sit back in, a few years time and potentially the athletes that I've worked with, over the time that I'm here and even the ones I've worked with prior in other sports, to see them sort of blossom and have their own careers is awesome. And I'm starting to see the fruits of that already, which is awesome to know that maybe I've played a part in their development. So, yeah.
Wow, that's great, mate. Exciting stuff in the coaching life and then outside of coaching as well.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
That's good.
So how do you think the rugby league competition this year has gone?
Look, I think it's been good. I think the fact that last year was a tough year for the players, in that, I guess, the COVID challenges and being all shipped up north. I think we underestimate how tough that was for the players and the families that kind of go with that. And so for them to sort of get back into their own, I guess, environments and own training settings, as we're sort of seeing the benefits of that. And I think the brand of rugby league that's been played this year. Even the last weekend, watching some of those finals games, they were so tight and kept you on the edge of your seat. And I think sometimes, you can, those bottom end teams, particularly in the bottom four of the eight, 5 versus 8 and 6 versus 7, those games can sometimes be like, just, or not make up games, but they don't have the same, I guess, importance as when you watch the 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3. But they're all really cracking games. And I think that any team who's in there at the moment does have some sort of shot. I probably haven't been able to say that for some time, which is really cool. So it's awesome to see. Obviously, the Raiders are still in, and I've got some connections still there. So it's great to see their back end of the season and how they're going. So it's an exciting time, and I think this time of year, even local finals of all sports is really cool. People are. It's the best time of the year, really. So I'm enjoying seeing the results that are happening right across the board.
That's good, mate. Do you follow any team as your team now, being a coach? Is there a team that you like the most?
No, I don't have a team per se. Like I tend to watch people I've either played with or had some sort of connection with it as a mate or whatnot. I probably would be lying if I don't have some soft spot for Penrith and Canberra, having spent some time there. And I don't have a team per se, but I want to see those teams do well. And I know when Penrith won the comp last year, that was something that I'd seen in their culture, even when I went to the club in the past, like seeing how they operate, not only on a player's point of view, but how their whole organisation runs from top to bottom is second to none. Not to say that Canberra wasn't like that, but I just remember the development that they had, and even going down to their junior reps training and stuff, like just the systems they had in place, you could see that they were going to be successful. And this, again, much like I talk about the development of my athletes, I think they're now seeing the fruits of, the processes and systems they put in place all those years ago. And again, for them, I think they'll be successful for a really long time.
No, 100%. I do go for Parramatta, so hopefully the Parramatta can get up against the Raiders this weekend.
Yeah,
so
it'll be interesting. It will be interesting. I think Canberra don't have a whole lot to lose, and Parramatta have probably got the pressure on them in that sense. They've got to slick, players across the park, but I probably didn't expect the turnout they had last week against. I thought they'd probably put a better showing up against Penrith, given they've had the wood over them throughout the year. But that is the class of Penrith. So anyway, we'll see what happens.
No, it's going to be a great weekend of rugby league. So growing up as a young lad, how did you end up playing rugby league?
Yeah, probably an interesting one for me. I started out playing soccer originally, and I think at the time it probably, I was probably like 6 years old, and my parents sort of just threw me into soccer because potentially it was what, at the time, I think a couple of the people who lived in my street were playing, who were around the same age and went to school. But I guess I only had 1 or 2 years in soccer. I remember the second year, out of potentially 10 boys in my year level at school, only 2 of us played soccer. And at lunchtime, we weren't allowed to play. They made up this rule that we weren't allowed to play touch or tackle with them because we didn't play on the weekend. So essentially, I almost got bullied into playing rugby league there for a little bit. They were, no, you can't play with us. And so me and this other boy, we'd go off and just kick the soccer ball or pass the footy ourselves because we wanted to play. I went home and I remember telling Mum after a bit that, no, I need to play league because otherwise I can't play at lunchtime with the boys. So I think it started about 7. And because I was younger for my year at school, I wanted to play with those who were in my year level at school. So I played a year up, basically till I was about 12, I think, which probably held me in good stead to, play against a little bit higher level. But I think playing in sort of country footy, I was always playing both grades. I eventually started playing my own age and potentially the 2 ages above, just because we were short players. And I loved it, being able to play, you get 3 games across a weekend instead of just the 1. So, I guess, and I just slowly, I fell in love with it, just because of obviously the mateship and back then probably, the defense side of it was really good. I wasn't didn't grow up to be a strike defender by any stretch, but I did still like that side of it. And yeah, just, I, as a young kid, I did cross country and athletics and stuff. So just trying to use speed and stuff like that was, something I tried to build into my game.
That's awesome. I think it's kind of funny the rules that you make up as a young kid back at
Oh,
primary
mate,
school. When you think back, you're just like,
classic.
what were we thinking?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I think we used to have these bindies down on this bottom oval. I remember, we try and play tackle, and we were tackling into the bindies, and it was awful. And we wait until the teacher turned around, and then it'd turn into touch, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the teacher turned around, back into tackle. But I think all that skills that you learn then, that's where it starts, in terms of how you develop your skills. And yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
I think the best was when State of Origin came around. I remember back at school, we used to split into New South Wales versus Queensland, and just adding those into the mix was really good fun.
Yeah, nah, it's awesome. I remember talking about this with my partner that I used to, on State of Origin night, I don't even know if I had a jersey per se, like a Blues jersey, but I used to put on a blue shirt or whatever. And they used to do where those intros where they turn up and you cross your arms and call out your junior club. I remember always doing that, just sort of envisioning potentially getting to that moment. So funny stuff.
That's awesome. So you had quite the journey over your rugby league career. You were, like we said, both in the system of the Canberra Raiders and also in the Penrith Panthers. You were able to play in the under-20s comp and the Auckland Nines for the Raiders, and then go up to the Penrith Panthers playing in the New South Wales Cup. Can you share a bit more light on those experiences being involved with both systems?
Yeah, I guess I started out and sort of went through the rep sort of system as a junior, and was playing league and union up until about 13. And then sort of just made the decision that I couldn't do both, just purely on the fact that, the time commitment of both, and we were traveling to Canberra, both the Brumbies juniors at the time and the Raiders. And for me, the pathway in league just looked a little bit clearer at the time. And I sort of just decided to go down that path. And then at the age of sort of 14, I first got picked up with a manager, and Raiders showed some interest in sort of a development contract, and I took that up and spent a few years there. And I think I was sort of thinking about this the other day, and in talking with someone, I think at that point it still seemed really far-fetched, the opportunity to be a professional player at that point, even though I'd signed with the Raiders and it was exciting and it was something that was, very cool to everyone around me that had happened. I still probably didn't think it was a reality until I re-signed probably 2 years later, and my pathway through the professional rugby league was sort of mapped out a little bit clearer. And I then end up moving over at 17 once I finished school, and played through the under-20 system, and came into a under-20s team after just having shoulder surgery. I sort of had 15 weeks out. I came back in sort of almost the minimum time after a Rico. And I came into a team that was absolutely flying, which really helped me. I just sort of slotted into the team and just played my role, and had a really good back end of the year, and was promoted into the NRL squad off the back of that, and just trained across the summer. So in the space of, I guess, almost 6 to 8 months, I'd gone from being an SG ball potential player who just had surgery, was worried about whether he was going to be able to make it at all, into now I was doing an NRL preseason. So that was a really quick transition, and that's where I got that opportunity to play in that first sort of Auckland Nines there. So I guess over the next couple of years, I was kind of hampered by a few injuries, hamstrings and shoulder, sort of namely. Sort of had 2 shoulder recos in that sort of 3 years. But the times that I did get on the field, I probably showed some glimpses of what I had in terms of potential. I wasn't the finished product by any means, but off the back of that, Canberra kind of came to me and said, look, unfortunately, we can see some potential and you're working really hard, but we're just not getting the time out of you on the field that we need. And if you get an opportunity elsewhere, take it up. And I remember getting an email from my manager that Penrith were interested, and Phil Gould wanted to meet with me. I did not sleep a wink of sleep that night because it was really tough. I think I really was doubting whether I was going to be able to have a career. The injuries that I'd had, 2 shoulder recos, I put on a fair bit of size in that period just to sort of meet the demands of trying to play against men. I played in a few NRL trials, and I guess I was on the cusp there, but I still wasn't sure whether I was going to have what it took. But yeah, met with him, and I remember sitting down with him and one of their recruitment guys there, and one of the biggest things he said to me that stuck with me the whole time is, recruitment manager asked me, what are your weaknesses? What are some of the things you need to work on if you're going to come to our club? And so I rattled off a few things. I think at the time, I loved to attack, but I probably need to have a bit more of a defensive mindset as well. And to play at the next level, I knew that I needed to be able to make my tackles and fall part of the system. And I said, I probably need to continue to put on a little bit more size to play week in, week out NRL if I'm going to get there. And then they turned to Phil and said, oh, what do you see in Andrew that his weaknesses are based on what you've seen? Because he'd watched me throughout those few years. And he said, I don't care about his weaknesses. He said, I only care about his strengths. I want to know what he can bring to my club, which was a really interesting way to look at it. I know that a lot of people ask, like, what are the weaknesses and what do you got to work on? And all he wanted to know was, what strengths are you going to bring to my team? We can work on your weaknesses. That's areas that we can control and build in. But what are you going to add to our football team? Which I thought was a really interesting way to look at things. And obviously his stature within the game is so great. And maybe that's part of why his thinking is probably a little different to others, the way he sees things, which was really cool. And it's probably stuck with me as well as now as coming a coach is we often look to find areas that we can improve in an athlete, but how do we maximize those things that they either already have naturally or the areas that they've slowly developed over time? How can we build on those and make those a real asset to their performance? We don't have to sort of fit into this one box of what an athlete should look like. So I thought that was really cool. And again, I was hampered by a fair few injuries at Penrith. I had sort of bilateral hamstring tears, 5 or so on each side, and got close to playing NRL there, like pretty close. Like I would train within the team a couple of times and sort of thought my opportunity might have been there, but kind of just got struck down. And I don't have any regrets on that by any means, but got offered the opportunity to move on if I wanted to. I had a 2-year contract, but got offered to move on if I found an opportunity. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up over in the Super League. So yeah.
No, it's awesome, mate. And yeah, I love that point from Phil Gould, focusing on the strengths and the things that make that athlete special and how can that boost to my team. I think that's really cool. And yeah, you can work on the weaknesses, but I think for athletes and coaches, don't forget what makes that athlete really special, because that's what you're trying to develop and continue to develop. And you can work on those weaknesses over the many months and years that you're with them. So yeah, I love that point.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because how that fits in as part of that team. Like, what's the ingredients that are missing within that successful team, And if that person has the skills that you don't already have, and you're bringing in those services, because as a player, I think you have to bring your services to the club almost, and your talents to the club. So how that fits, you may have one of the best players in the world, but if their talents aren't what you need right now, then they're not going to be as valuable to you. So I know that at the time he was looking for someone who had some strike, and could sort of add to the system. So it was interesting.
When I think of that, it just reminds me of the NFL. So big NFL fan, Seattle Seahawks represent. Yeah. And it's just crazy to see how players jump from different teams to different practice squads and then get signed to the active roster. And you might not excel in one system, but you go over to the next system and you do excel and become a star player. Like I've seen that so many times, and it's just awesome to see that coaches find that strength or that area that makes that play special, and then develops that, and then see the
Mm.
results out in the field. I love that.
Yeah, really cool. Really, really cool.
So after a great season with the Panthers, you moved over to England to play for Hull Kingston Rovers in the Super League. You had quite the introduction to the Super League by scoring 2 tries on debut and then scoring 18 tries in 24 games. It's pretty impressive there, mate. So how did you find that level of competition over there playing in the Super League?
Yeah, it was interesting how that all came about. I guess off the back of Penrith and them giving me the option, went away on just a bit of a break post-season, and again it was a bit of a time to kind of reflect on where I was at in my career, and my management was seeking out some different opportunities because it looked like, I guess, my road at Penrith was coming to a bit of an end, because obviously they were offering opportunities to get out. And then, yeah, after a lot of conversations with a lot of clubs, Hull KR kind of came in and were really keen. Tim Sheens came in and said, look, you know, basically, I think you're the man for the job in terms of what I need in my team. And I went over there, and I remember arriving. I played a lot of fullback and 5'8" when I was at Penrith. And he basically said, when I got there, I just started training at fullback. And he said, oh, just so you know, you're going to be my right center. And I said, oh, okay. Like, are you sure? Pretty much, like, I'm happy to do whatever you like, but I've been
Mm.
playing fullback and I haven't played center for a few years. That was kind of my first introduction to under 20s. And I guess, yeah, that was an interesting thing for him to say. I said, why do you see me in that position? He explained how he felt my skill set were best suited to that position. And he just had this real belief in me. And it was the first time someone who was I guess a first team coach, as they kind of refer to over there, that had this real belief that I could be the startup center. And so, yeah, I kind of had bounced around positions throughout the juniors that probably suited the team, not me as an individual. Like, I sort of fit for purpose. I moved into the halves. I probably wasn't really a half. Like, I wasn't bad as a 5'8", but again, I hadn't had any consistency because of injuries. And getting into Hull KR, they dropped down to the league below in that first year in championship. And I had a really good run of period where I was playing games consistently. And I kind of saw the benefit of that, being able to play and be locked in on one position. But that was a really cool experience to work under Tim, and the little nuances that he had for me and how I could improve my game. And I think it really fitted for me a lot of the conditioning work we did here in Australia. Off was probably, as a Duke, someone who'd come from, progressed pretty quickly, I guess, into an NRL sort of squad, both at Canberra and Penrith. I probably, the running volume probably really didn't work for me and my body probably as well, as I wasn't able to handle it. I think that was part of the issue of why I was potentially getting some of these soft tissue injuries. I went over there and we did a lot of off-feed conditioning, and a lot of conditioning games, as to sort of supplement that. So potentially not the high level of running volume, which seemed to suit me a little bit better. And I think it allowed me to stay on the field a little bit longer. I was able to become a little bit more robust and attack some of those weaknesses in terms of my shoulder and stuff, to get me in a position ready to tackle Super League. And we got to the end of that year and played in what they call their qualifiers. And the qualifiers is basically like an 8-game. The bottom 4 of Super League play the top 4 of Championship in this 8-game series, and we basically won 5 straight, and beat the Super League teams and got ourselves promoted, which was huge. It was massive for the town, massive for the whole team, because that was a vision that we had from the outset to do that. So yeah, that part was probably one of the best moments of my career, is getting in a position where I'd gone through some of those struggles to now seeing success, both for myself as an individual and also contributing to a team. So yeah, that first year was really, really cool.
That's awesome. And getting belief from your coach, I know it just does wonders for you as an athlete and just makes you feel valued, and you really want to pay back the coach with a really good performance and just showing up and training hard. Whereas if you don't get that belief from the coach, it really makes it hard to, I know, be at that club and that organization and play the game that you are, because you feel like you're being judged. But if you sort of got that, yeah, belief in you from the coach and he says, yep, go out there, do what you're going to do, and I believe in you, it just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And look, he would say things like he thought that I could be one of the top centers in the whole competition, and he thought that I could be NRL quality in the next couple of years. And he would say things like, you know, Hef, if you come here and have a good couple of years and an NRL team picks you up and you go back there and play in that competition because that's a better opportunity for your career, then I'll be happy to let you go. You know, and for me, he was caring about the individual rather than, you know, his own needs in that sense. So for him to say things like that was massive. And I guess I guess I'm from that point of view, that spurred me on to really want to repay that faith that he had in me, as you exactly what you're saying there. So
Mm.
yeah, I think that's something potentially that again that I've probably carried as in terms of how I potentially coaches, I guess they have an awareness of what they believe their athletes can do, but communicating that at some points, you know, I don't think that maybe we make it known how well potentially an athlete is going or how much progress they're making. Again, it goes back to that whole idea that we do want to attack the weaknesses and always getting better, but a little bit of that recognition of where you are right now and where you've come from, I think is always important. So
100%. So do you think the suit going over to the UK is a great way, like a great stepping stone for, say, Australian athletes to go over there, play, and then potentially get that opportunity coming back to the NRL?
yeah, I think so, and probably goes both ways. Like um, I'm seeing a few more of those younger English-based players coming, English and France-based players coming and playing here. Um, you know, Dominic Young at the Knights and a couple of others that are starting to filter in. I guess the advantage is that you're playing top level like rugby league every week, and it becomes less about when you're playing in New South Wales Cup. It's all about feeding into the NRL team. You know, provide, you know, when you're training each week, you're almost simulating the opposition team to make sure that the NRL team are ready each week. And New South Wales Cup is still about that development, but ultimately it's about helping the NRL team get results. I think going over there, you become the forefront of mind in terms of you are the one that we want to get the results out of, and you're our guy ultimately. So I think it is a great option. I think that it's a different game style. It's a lot more free flowing. There's potentially less wrestle in it over there, which probably suited me a little bit better. That aspect of being able to play a little bit more off the cuff and play what's in front. It probably doesn't suit some players, and maybe they don't go. Even really good NRL players that go over there who are a lot more structured don't probably blossom quite as much. I think about just in recent times, like Matt Duffy's not long gone over there from the Dragons. Mate, the Super League suits him down to a T. You know, that his speed, you know, his ability to just see moments and take them on and offloads and probably chance your arm a little bit more. I'd probably say second to that, you see an English player come here who's come out of the Super League. They'll definitely play a little bit different in the way they play. Someone like John Bateman, I wasn't sure how he would go in the NRL with the Raiders, but the way he plays upsets teams because it's not that structure. He
Mm.
bounces around across field and he sort of gets into holes, and they'll happily throw an offload because that's how they've been grown up, but that's how they play. Here, we buy into this system of, you know, completions and kick and chase and build pressure. So I think a combination of that really works within a team or a system. And I think even Canberra beating Melbourne last week, that's kind of what upset Melbourne, is that they do have that ability to sort of throw an offload and play what they see in front. So I think it goes both ways. For me, I was really lucky that my grandfather was of Maltese background. His parents were born in Malta, so I got a Maltese passport, which meant that I was only a half quota point and could easily go over and play there. So I guess is lucky in a sense for me. Otherwise, it can be a really hard sell to a club that this person's going to add value, because you only have a certain amount of quota points with each Super League team, but only being half a point because of that Maltese background or within the European Union. That certainly helped my cause. I didn't have to wait on visas. The moment they asked me and wanted me to come, I was on a plane within 2 days, So, yeah, I think it's a great option. I think it's a great option both ways.
No, that's awesome. It's a great insight. So, unfortunately, your career was cut short due to multiple concussions. When did you know you had to retire?
Yeah, it was a tough moment, because I think that it probably, for others, they probably saw it a lot earlier than I did. I was probably in a little bit of denial, and probably, obviously as an athlete, you don't want it to end, and things like this that are taken out of your control make it really hard, because we're all what we, I think, as an athlete or anyone, the things that you can control, if you know that you're ticking all the boxes to get back and do your job or whatever you are well, then it's hard when that's not in your control. I had another left shoulder Rico when I was over there, and basically from Easter of 2017 through to Easter of 2018, I had 5 knockouts, like where I got completely knocked out. I probably had a bunch more, to be honest, at least another 5 that didn't get diagnosed that I sort of played on with. And I do put that down to, I was protecting myself a little bit with the left shoulder. Even though I'd done all the rehab, I had this natural way that I wanted to come to my right shoulder to make a tackle that potentially was a left shoulder tackle. So I get my head in poor positions. And sometimes the concussions were with and without the ball, but I definitely think that was a contributed to it. And so that awareness of, you could practice 20, 30 reps, during the week, working on making sure you're getting that left shoulder tackle right and getting yourself in the right position, and you could nail them in training. But when you come into a game and it's just live and you're just reacting and your subconscious takes over and it looks to protect that left shoulder, even after it is recovered, you go to a right shoulder tackle and all of a sudden you find your head in a poor position. So that kind of went through, and I wasn't really feeling the effects until, I was the days afterwards each time. But after the one that I had around the Easter weekend in 2018, it gave me a month off because I'd done a lot of testing, against the baseline, and I was actually passing those tests really easy, almost better than the baseline scores. And it was largely due to the fact that what was being picked up in the testing was more around my cognitive function and not my vestibular function. My cognitive was always really sound. Like, I could always remember what had happened generally, maybe not the period there, but within a couple of days, I was pretty good in that sense. What really suffered was that vestibular system, my awareness within space. I would get very dizzy. I'd have vertigo. I struggled to drive. I struggled to look at a phone. Any sort of jolting of the head really troubled me. And we had what's called Magic Weekend, similar to what they've now got here in the NRL. That was going to be played up in Newcastle in the UK. And I'd had this month off, and I was going to pick up my brother and cousin from the airport at Manchester, which is about a 2-hour drive. And I was tipped to play that game. So the media had sort of built it up that Hef's going to be back for that game. Coaches, I passed all the testing that they'd asked me to do. I'd done my contact progressions, but I was somewhat lying in the sense that I'd done those last progressions to get back to play. And I wasn't feeling some symptoms at the time, but I would feel symptoms a few hours later and into the night. So I wasn't sleeping. I was taking a hell of a lot of paracetamol and painkillers to try and get through. And I had this inkling to try and hide it, knowing that, potentially I couldn't play, and there was a lot of nervousness around that. I was driving to pick up my brother and cousin, and I was at the point where I was driving along. It was a rainy day. It's the UK. And I could hardly see the road. And all of a sudden it just hit me that there's no way in 2 days' time that I can go out and, tackle 120 kilo blokes and, put my head in position. So I pulled over the side of the road and I rang my physio at the time, burst into tears. We were really close because he'd been along the journey with me. He was a great fella. And I said to him, I can't do it. And he said, I know what you're talking about. I know that there's symptoms there, and my housemate at the time had noticed that I was going out in the middle of the night and he'd ring me and say, mate, what's going on? I was like, oh, I'm just going for a walk. But I was just trying to clear my head and try to come to grips with the fact that I knew that my career might have been over. I pulled over. I spoke to my parents. I rang the coach and said, look, man, I just can't do it. I can't play this weekend. I know that there's something not right. I know that the testing's saying that I'm right, but I'm going to have to go out and seek another specialist. And basically found another specialist. They sort of did this testing on me with this sort of pivot shift test with my head, and they could see the lag and the problems that were happening. And again, it was an emotional time. I burst into tears, but the reason that I burst into tears that time was actually in joy, which sounds funny, but it was the first time throughout that whole time that someone had told me that something was actually wrong, because the testing kept telling me that I was right to play. And for them to say that they could see what was wrong and there was going to be a plan in place for me to try and get better was so relieving. And so, I had a 6-month period over there where I tried to rehab. I did that. I definitely got better at the rehab. I was still on really heavy pain medication. Every day I couldn't put me to sleep. I was very drowsy all the time. But I got to the end of that 6 months and I knew I'd improved somewhat, but it definitely wasn't the point of going out and tackling, rugby league players. So I made the decision off the back of their advice. They'd asked me, they said that we strongly recommend that you retire. Again, I said no. I went back again. They said, look, if you're in the NFL, we could retire. We actually can't make the decision for you. You have to make the decision based on our advice. And then from there, that's basically where I went. And I came back to Australia and I made the transition from an athlete to coach pretty quickly, because I wanted to start to build that new identity, because that's all I'd known as being an athlete. I'd been working in all the clubs I'd been in prior to upskill in how to be a coach, luckily, because I had that to fall back on, and I love that side of it. That's kind of how it landed. But I definitely don't have any regrets in that sense. The things I got to do and things that I achieved, potentially could I have gone on and done more? Maybe, but I didn't. And now I'm getting to help push other people and see them achieve what they want to achieve in their careers. So I definitely don't have regret, or don't begrudge and say things like I could have done this, I could have done that. So which is sort of, I've come to terms with that. So which is good.
Hi everyone. We just wanted to take a break from this episode. We hope you are enjoying this episode so far, and also all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC newsletter today. We provide you free, exclusive content each and every single week to our subscribers. Link in the bio. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on social media to all your friends and families. So thanks again for your support, and now back to the episode. So do you have any advice for contact sport athletes who might be in a similar boat of getting multiple concussions in a season and just sort of struggling a bit?
Yeah. I think that the tough one is that you can't let an individual story or someone else's story determine how your journey will be. Everyone's is going to be very, very different. And how concussions are, there's so many factors that go into it. And they have to be treated that way. The biggest thing I would say is not using time as a measure to determine when you're going to be back playing. And as coaches and as other teammates of that person, any pressure around that is really tough, because when we put a time-based, rehab, it is really hard with concussion. It's probably, we always try to use, and that's sort of moving that way, that we're using criteria-based rehab to do anything we do, but particularly with concussion, I think that's important. I think that the testing's at a point now where it's improving. Like every day it's improving. Sports are more aware of it, particularly contact sports are they're upping their protocols. They're bringing in independent doctors. They keep bringing in specialists and the best advice. But it's the best advice that we have right now. And anytime we can be a little bit more conservative, and it relies on a lot of subjective nature in terms of the testing, and it relies on the athlete to be really honest with how they're feeling. And I just urge anyone to make sure that you are as honest as you can be. And sometimes you do lose that awareness in that time. It is actually hard to know what it felt like prior to your concussion. What does no symptoms feel like? Obviously fatigue and stuff makes you feel a little bit cloudy in your day and stuff as well. So as much as you can communicate that and really try and, I guess, take that really gradual step approach to getting back, I think that's important, because the 1 or 2 extra weeks that maybe you take out of the game, in the long run, it means that you'll get to have a longer lasting career, whereas potentially you come back 2 weeks early or 1 week early, and that offsets you for a greater period of time. It may seem like the worst thing in the world, and the tough part is when you have particular events or games that are super important. Like if it's a finals game, all of a sudden people say, oh, well, he's got to play the grand final, he's got to play the semi-final. But your brain doesn't remember that. It's just going off how it's feeling at the time. And so trying to take away the external pressures that come with it, I think, is really important. And that was big for me. I wanted to get promoted. I wanted to sign a new contract. I wanted to do what was right for my team, and I pushed through some of the stuff that maybe I shouldn't have. But I guess in the hindsight tells you that maybe I'm a little bit more transparent or honest with where I'm at, and maybe I get a little bit longer out of my career. But that's a learning, and I can take that on with push that onto other people. So
yeah, that's some great advice there. And yeah, just like you said, be honest and make sure that you have a really good relationship with your medical team and S&C coach and head coach as well. And just be honest and open about talking. Yeah, I'm not feeling okay, and I'm still struggling this bit. I don't think I can play that game. And it sort of comes back to that culture and environment around having concussion. And the teams that I've been a part of have been really open about it and be like, if you're not right, you got to tell us, because we don't want to put you in a position where it puts you in harm's way, because this might have not been so bad, but the next one could be a lot worse and detrimental. So yeah, you just got to really make sure you have a really good environment and can talk to your players, and players can put their hand up and come talk to you as well, and be really open and honest about that, and not just focus on winning the game. It's about your players. It's about treating people as people. It's not just about getting the wins on the weekend. Wins are important, but you really got to treat people like people.
Yeah, definitely. And like the second last one that I had was definitely the worst I've probably ever had. It was off a kickoff, front rower beelined it towards me. I copped an elbow. I did the whole, tried to stand up, ran away, hit the ground again. That was a really tough one. I recovered quite quick. Within 2 weeks, I'd passed all the testing. I got back, and I actually didn't have any symptoms. And on the day of the game, I went for a haircut and just getting a fresh fade. And I basically had a headache while I was getting a cut. And I was thinking, now that I've had a week and a half of no symptoms, that can't be related to what happened 2 weeks ago. This just must be a normal headache. Hindsight tells me no, because I played the game, and the first knock that I got, it was kind of like being glass. Like, it's just like your head becomes a little bit more that you don't have the same tolerance to the knocks that you had before. And that's kind of what happened. I got a really light knock, and straight away I was gone. And that's when I guess the worry from everyone else kind of came in. And I think just always being super cautious, and maybe, making that known to medical staff may have helped me in that moment. But, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So,
No, some great insight and great advice there. So I appreciate that. As a player, did you understand how important S&C was to your performance, or was it something that you learned over your career?
I think potentially in rugby league, there's obviously like a culture around, particularly as a younger athlete, trying to build that body armor to be able to deal with, contact and things. So I guess it was a really big part from a young age. And I learned that pretty young when I first signed with the Raiders, and they were giving out programs and things like that. In terms of how much impact it could have, that's probably off the back of the S&C coaches that I had from program to program, and how I was pretty lucky. They were really good ones, and they're ones that I still keep in contact with today, and people that I would turn to as mentors. Particularly when I was at Canberra, Jeremy Robinson was the S&C at the time. And the things that he taught me, because I had an interest in, S&C as well. And, I was sort of doing my internship as well at the time with them in S&C. The things that I learned off him and how that can have an impact on performance and be a value add. And obviously S&C is only one piece of the puzzle around athlete performance, and the sport itself and sport training is most important, but how you can value add to that, that's probably the part that I slowly learned more and more, getting away from trying to mimic particular movements and how to actually just build the capacities that help that athlete go, be better on the field, on the court, on the track, on the ice, whatever the sport is. The more I learn about that is probably the part that kind of came more and more as I went through, and the different ways that you can bring about the adaptation that you're after. Even me going into a system where conditioning was done totally different, there was a lot more off-feet conditioning as opposed to running volume. We still had running volume, but just opened my eyes up to how there's so many ways to skin a cat, basically, and trying to get that to meet the needs of the athlete and their sport is really cool. And that's what excites me every day, is trying to develop and learn about how, we can be better with the programs that we're working with. So I think that's something that I guess evolved for me.
I think that's awesome you took that interest as a player, and some of my favorite athletes are the ones who really take an interest in how this type of training can enhance their performance, and they take the ownership on themselves to develop themselves to become, I don't know, coaches. Even if they don't get the qualifications and all that, they're still building themselves up so that if they go to a new team or anything, they could really do some good coaching. Or if I'm over on the other side of the room and they see something wrong, I tell them, go help your teammate, because we play a team sport and I can't see everything, especially if it's just me in the room. So go out there and help your teammates and learn, and make sure you listen to what I'm saying, so then you can apply it to another teammate and apply it to yourself. So I think that's really cool when athletes do take a genuine interest in strength conditioning, because it is such a big part of sport. And if you can do that, it's just going to benefit you and benefit the team as well.
I think it, as a coach, particularly, it depends on the coach to athlete sort of ratio. You're spot on. Like, being able to bring in almost gym leaders, some people who have been around, particularly your coaching and your understanding. Obviously, there's a point where you have to come in and have your influence with an athlete. But if you're able to instill, I guess, a confidence and a level of education and understanding of your principles in your athletes, and they're able to share that amongst themselves, the independent athlete is a dangerous athlete. Like, if you can program for yourself, and understand all those reasons for yourself, that's a really exciting thing to have. And I think that's, even as working in the development space, that's part of our goal, is like, can we develop athletes that potentially could write their own programs if they're between systems? Could they, understand load? Could they understand these things to the point that would get them from point A to point B? Obviously, they're going to draw on your expertise in particular areas, but to have that really base understanding to get them through, and how to manage their own body is so key, regardless of what level that you're at, because you're not always going to be spoon-fed the programs, be given the recovery protocols, have that advice. And it's great to see athletes come back to me who have left my program and ask for advice, or scaffold the programs, or would you consider doing this? But for them to sort of come to me with a plan first, and me help develop that with them, I guess that's a bit of a mark of, I think, of my coaching. If I've instilled some of those values in them, they can carry that forward.
I love that. It's awesome. So you've been an S&C coach for many years now. What is your current coaching philosophy, and has this philosophy sort of changed over the years?
Yeah, definitely. I remember there's probably a few coaches that have said something similar, but the simpler the better. Like getting savagely good at the basics and doing those really, really well is super important. I think that there's this expectation that when you get to elite sport, and I work with some camps-based stuff here at the AIS, and get some exposure to some of that and the insights to that, which is really cool, and get to influence some of those programs. But there's this understanding, well, there's this belief that you have to do these whiz bang programs, and everything has to look a certain way because they're an elite athlete is a long way off the mark. Just having a really good, strong foundational base underneath you, and being a resilient athlete that's being able to be on the field, on the court, or whatever all the time, or as much of the time as you can. That's the important part, I think. And also knowing that when I guess you put together a program, and this is the part that's always still evolving, is like you can write out a pretty 12-month program, but if that doesn't fit in with what the sport coach is doing, what other service providers within the performance team have, if it's not one integrated team or one approach or one program ultimately, then you're kind of just working in these individual silos, and the athlete isn't at the center of that. It's our own prejudice on what we think will work for the athlete. So the way that you bring in a team, and draw on the experiences and I guess the expertise of other people within the team, whoever is the team, whether that team is small and you just have potentially an S&C and a coach, like draw on the other person. If you have a wider team that you can draw on, performance psychs or dietitians or whoever you have access to, bring in their skill set. Like they're there for a reason, and make sure that like your programming or the way that you coach reflects everyone's values, not just your own preconceived ideas on how you think you're going to get athlete from point A to point B to be, the best they can be. So how you use a team is probably the biggest part that's grown for me. And I guess I think what I probably did on my early times as a coach, when at whatever program, even when I was at Canberra and Penrith, like I worked with the junior reps programs and stuff, just trying to be a value add. Like when you come into a program, not trying to overhaul and change it all to how you want to do things, sit back and take the time to just see what stuff is already in there, and then just like sprinkle in what's needed. Where can you value add? If you try to overhaul the whole program and change everything, you lose some of the DNA that's good in there. And I think that comes back to the point around, tell me what your strengths are, and we'll just build on those, So, yeah, I think that's kind of where my philosophy's at now. In 2 weeks' time, honestly, it could be, it could be different again. I know that everyone always says it, but literally my philosophy and the experience I have by the other coaches that I'm lucky enough to work with, like day in, day out, and I listen to, genuinely shapes how my philosophy is at that time and the athletes I work with. So I think that's a really big part, is like who you surround yourself with. I think early on, it's good to go out and coach a program on your own and learn and make mistakes. But doing that alongside also shadowing coaching and learning from others, I think is so key. And basically for me, I just kind of grab the best parts of all of the coaches that I'm shadowing or seeing, or the programs I'm working with, to try and build up myself as a coach, but also the program that I'm working with at the time, or the athlete I'm working with at the time.
That's awesome. Keep it simple, focus on those basics, and from a coaching standpoint, always keep the athlete in mind first. It's not just about what you want to do, it's about what you want. It's about the athlete and how you can enhance their performance as well. I love that.
No, I think it's keeping them at front of mind all the time is really key. So no, it's cool. It's cool.
I think the thing that surprises me the most when an athlete comes and does one of my programs or one of Ben's programs is sort of how simple it is. And we're just focusing on these movement parts, but we're doing some jumping, some landing wheel and squatting and benching and all that stuff, but they're doing it in more, I don't know, structured manner, and they're just surprised how well it works. And that's
Mm,
not probably not what they expected. And you see those other coaches or trainers out on Instagram, and they're doing all this fancy stuff, and it's just probably doesn't work. And they do try it, but they just like, oh, I didn't really, I don't know, get the full benefit. But when they come do those basic stuff, they get the maximum benefit from it. And I love seeing that, that when they come to a program, it's nothing flashy or anything. It's just training really well, moving with intent, moving fast, and lifting some reasonable weight. Is probably the best way to go. And the amount of times I see the All Blacks training on the YouTube with those videos that they have, it's just the basics, and they are the
yeah,
best at what they do. It's just the basics. So if you're listening, just get the basics down packed, you know.
yeah, no, for sure. And I think like the mark of you as a coach, I think, is also when that athlete moves on to another program, or maybe goes and works with another trainer or another S&C. Like, what are they able to do the fundamentals really, really well? And despite, for me, I have an athlete here at the moment, and even when I was working with volleyball and tennis potentially a little bit longer, but volleyball, maybe I'm going to have that athlete for 2 years. And again, I might have these ideas of how we can build them up, but I also have to be considerate of like, what programs are they going to go in beyond here? Like, do I have an understanding of their program? And maybe even if I don't have the same beliefs or philosophies, I wouldn't program the same as potentially another S&C that they're going to go into. If I don't prepare that athlete for that program as well, like, and the things that they're going to be faced with in that program, then I'm also don't think that I'm doing my job to the best that I can as well. Are they expected to do some Olympic lifts in their next program? If so, am I upskilling the athlete in being able to understand the fundamentals of that, to get to that next stage, So again, it's kind of comes down to putting away, it goes back to athlete focus, taking away your own prejudice on what you think. And am I setting that athlete up for success beyond the program that they're in right now, or the time that I'm spending with that athlete right now? I think, and the athlete themselves can always think that they have to be the finished product that they're at a certain point in time. But long-term athletic development, it's more than that. It's not the 1 or 2 years that you then get to this certain time or position or look that you perceive to be an athlete. It's what goes on all the way through, and however long that career span is, depending on the sport and the athlete. So yeah.
No, 100%. So what advice do you have for S&C coaches out there in the field? Is there anything that sort of stands out that all S&C coaches need to know?
I think that, to be honest, like, you could go back to like understanding the basic principles of training and all of those things. But I think the best piece of advice I have is understand your athletes. Like, understand what makes them tick. You can't put together any sort of program or any sort of periodized plan if you don't know the athletes and you don't know where they've come from and where you're taking them. That'd probably be the biggest piece for me, is like, I love when I come into with an athlete that they've already got a program, that they're working on, because I just get to see them do what they do, and then I'll get to see how I'm going to shape them going forward. I think that's really key, is like, what's understanding, there's our athletes that don't like doing gym, and that's okay. Like, you're not going to have the same individual who's, some people love it. Some people get in there, they thrive in that environment. And it doesn't matter how much you create this great environment and explain the importance of S&C, they're not going to be driven in a way that they really want to come in and, bouncing off the walls to do your session. But if you can start to get to understand what makes them tick and how to show the relevance of what you're doing in the gym, on the court, to what they do, in, I guess, their own setting and within their sport, then that's the part that will help with that buy-in. So yeah, I think that's really important. Really important. Understand the athlete first.
Yeah.
Apologies, a phone call was coming through and I was
No.
a bit off there.
Nah, it's all good, mate. No, it's great. Some great advice. understand your athlete and also get to know them as well, because it's just a great time to get to know your athletes and know what makes them tick, and you can understand their story, which then can help better the program as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really key, and knowing that like no two athletes are the same. Like I have certain athletes that if there's a particular exercise that doesn't fit with their injury history or their makeup, you know, it's okay that I might not be able to back squat that particular person. As much as I'd like to be able to get them, through full range and get them to a particular benchmark that we perceive that will help them within their career. If I set out for within their sport that they have to do, 1.5 times body weight or whatever it is, if that exercise isn't right for them, then don't do it, because no one's going to look back on their career and go, oh, they back squatted this amount. They're going to look at how they performed in their sport, so just get that adaptation. And I think something that I've probably, as part of my evolved, is like working on two different streams at a time. Like, can I look at the technical part and develop the technical skills or the areas that maybe are limitations within their movement? And can I also work on the adaptation alongside that? Do I choose an exercise that's more shoot and kill, where it's a little bit simpler in process and they can build the adaptation, but alongside that, I'm working on the areas that maybe are limiting their back squat? Do I take them off and put them on something that's a little bit more simple, machine based, leg press? I don't know what it is, but every time it's going to be different. But yeah, that's, for me, that's part of that long-term athlete development journey. Is I can't just always throw that out and say, oh, that person can't back squat or that person can't do that. I'll try and work on maybe some of the limitations they're having, but I then also still have to work on the strength or whatever underpins them to be good at their sport. So
that's some great advice there. I love it. So what current TV show are you watching at the moment, mate? Is there anything that sort of stands out?
Oh, goodness. So it takes me a little bit to get into TV shows, but I'm a bit of a different one. Like, I love anything like sitcoms, like anything like Friends and stuff like that. And I will just like rerun. I'll just watch the same thing over and over. And I think it's like my way of like winding down, because I enjoy it. It's a bit of a laugh, The Office, things like that. So I've sort of just cycled between those. But yeah, in the past, I've always liked things like Breaking Bad, but then, you've got like Entourage and Ballers and stuff like that. Like, I just love getting into those. But even still, I love to go back and watch them. But I'm a little bit picky with my TV show.
Okay.
I just do reruns. Yeah.
And that's fair enough. I definitely do that as well. I've probably watched The Office again this year, probably for like the 20th time. And I don't know, you just watch it and you just make yourself laugh at the funny stuff that you remember, and the stuff that you forget. You forgot they said that type of joke, and you just crack up, and that's really good stuff.
It's funny.
So last few questions, going to move on to my favorite segment, Triple H. Shout out to the WWE wrestler out there. So just three questions, getting to know you better as a person and a coach. And the first one is a hardship. So can you think of a hardship in your rugby career or coaching career that sort of stands out? And how did you get through this hardship, and what did you learn as well?
Yeah, I'll probably touched a fair bit on the personal stuff in terms of my own sort of playing career. I'll probably allude now to like a little bit more of a coaching example. Probably the hardship for me was when seeing an athlete get injured, and it's happened. It happens all the time. But I guess coming to the acceptance that obviously you may have played a part in that injury, and there's things that you do differently and you learn lessons. The hardship of trying to be okay with that athlete, there are a number of factors that go into an injury. And so for me, coming to that realization that I'm always doing the best I can for the athlete, and sometimes things won't always go right. And so I guess having that little bit of self-acceptance or like not being so hard on yourself that you were part of the problem. I guess I take athlete injuries pretty hard, because I want to make sure that trying to get people into their sport, because I know the background of how tough it can be to be injured and how that it's tough to be disconnected from the group and stuff like that. So I guess my biggest learning is, how do I keep them involved in the group, and how do I be kind to myself and also the other athlete around, this is a journey, and how can we use potentially rehab as an opportunity to actually get better? Like, where can we use this as a time to potentially work on things that maybe get in the, I guess sport gets in the way sometimes, that we can't work on particular qualities that might actually maximize your performance when you get back to full training or full competition. So yeah, that'd be my hardship, is learning as a coach just to be a little bit kind to yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenging one. And one of the boys, probably like 10 weeks ago, had a really bad ankle injury, and there was nothing I could do. It was just a bad accident, but I felt gutted that day just to see, like, there was so much potential in him, and to have that setback. And he's only 17. He's got a massive career ahead of him, and he's going to be a future superstar. But it was just, I don't know, it really sucked. It was just a shit day just to see him get hurt and playing such good rugby, and he could have potentially got selected for under 18s Australia as well. And yeah, it's just hard. And just like you said, you sort of just got to accept that it has happened, and then just see it as an opportunity to help that player, especially in a very dark time as well, because injuries suck, and you get all these thoughts and you just feel like shit and nothing's going right. So it's a great time to reach out for the athlete, really help them, and then make them see that, okay, this is just a little setback for a big comeback, and get them better, and get them back playing the sport that they do love.
Yeah, I think it's always an opportunity. Like this, rehab is definitely an opportunity to like build the athlete better than they were before they were injured. Yeah, not just to rehab that injury, but how can you add other qualities or other elements to what they do?
So yeah. So next H, hero. Who is your hero, and why is this person your hero?
From a playing point of view, I would say that Benji Marshall was always my hero. I was lucky enough in 05, 04, around the time when they won the comp. I think at the start of 05, I got the opportunity to run the tee for the Tigers at Leichhardt, to a packed Leichhardt Stadium, to Benji. And that, as a kid, that was like the bee's knees. Like, I was so pumped. I actually left the tee out on the field, and Michael Ennis, was playing for Dogs at the time, kicked the tee away. So I had to run back out about 3 times because he was just being a pest. But yeah, just the way Benji played, like his flair and his feet. And I probably tried to mimic that for a long time, like a lot of young aspiring, probably league and union, like the ability to change direction and whatnot. I guess in terms of other people who I would say are my heroes, I think like my parents, both of them, and the people that were surrounded me from a young age, and what they instilled in me in terms of hard work and how to get where I am today, has been pivotal. And so I probably don't give them enough credit, out loud, but yeah, the respect I have for them and how they've supported me is huge. So I can't let them go away in that sense, because they're the people that are actually, connected to you, day to day. The heroes that you have outside of that are more, I guess, a dream of where you want to be, rather than people that I guess have a direct influence on how you are as a person. Yeah,
that's awesome. Shout out to Benji, and shout out to mum and dad as well. That's
yeah,
great.
I love it.
So the last H, highlight. What is a highlight that sort of stands out in your rugby career or coaching career?
Yeah, highlight for me, I'll probably give 2 really quick ones. First one would be the first time that I signed with the Raiders, the starting of my journey that I could have been turned into a reality. And then when I signed with Penrith and knew that I was now going from a development player potentially to be an NRL player, that was amazing, considering the hardships. As a coach, I had an athlete who, with volleyball, came in and he basically had some patellar tendon issues, which a lot of volleyballers do have at different times. The doctor at the time at QAS basically had said that he couldn't jump for 18 months on a particular surface, because they're on hard court and then on the beach as well. And they said that, look, he can't do certain jumping, and was going to be 18 months before he could jump completely on both surfaces. We sort of got a performance support team around him and came up with a bit of a plan. Not only did he struggled to walk without pain, we got him to the point where not only was he like one of the, I guess, the strongest he'd ever been, he was one of the strongest in the whole network for his, I guess, within the sport. And then he went on in the last couple of months, he actually debuted for the national team. So within 18 months, he went from, instead of not jumping, he went from being super strong, getting his body right, doing all the little things, to now representing his country. Like, that's the stuff that drives you to be a coach, is seeing, you know, that rise and fall of an athlete, and the appreciation he had for me as a coach and where I was able to take him. And particularly as an athlete, like, you don't always see the light at the end of the tunnel. And like, we had this vision for him, and in particular, I had this vision for him along with, you know, his direct coach, that we could get him to this point where he would be able to, you know, play day in, day out and train. And to see him go on that journey was awesome. Obviously, he made mistakes, and, you know, he questioned the process at different times, and, you know, looked for alternatives outside of what we were giving him, you know, different programs. Is someone else doing something better? And getting him to learn to trust the process. That's what inspires, I guess, me to do what I do each day, is take people on that journey. So that's probably makes
awesome.
me pretty proud.
That's awesome, mate. So that's all my questions for today. Where can listeners find you on social media?
Yeah, my social media has been a little bit messed around. I've lost my password to my personal Instagram, which is Heffernan1. You can still check it out. I just can't post. I can't do anything. Connected to that, I have a Platform Athletic Performance Instagram. So they're sort of connected. I'm not a big social media user, but I do like to, you know, see what everyone's doing and what's kind of keep up with the, you know, what other coaches are doing and people are doing within their lives. It's a great network to use. So more than welcome to cop a follow, and I'll do the same back. Awesome.
Awesome. So thanks for that. So thanks for joining me today. It's been awesome to get to know you better from your rugby career and also coaching career, and give some great insight on injuries and how to be sort of more resilient and come back from those injuries, but also great advice on concussion and being really open and honest. And we really appreciate that. And hopefully our listeners get something out from that. So thanks for joining me again today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. As I said, thanks for having me on. And I think the stuff that you and Ben are doing in terms of like the programming you're doing and I guess the education that you guys are providing, like, we just need more of that, you know, particularly, you know, regardless of what level, you know, at the amateur level, that semi-pro level, and all the way through. Just that sharing of good quality information and support is so key. And I think if you go out and you seek the right people within, I guess, that space, I think it definitely can add to the career that you're having. So, well done to you guys.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks for that. Awesome. Appreciate it. All right, enjoy the day and enjoy that haircut that you're going to get now.
Yeah, no, got to get there. Awesome. See you, mate.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, remember to sign up to our newsletter to receive free bonus content each and every single week. So don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level. Thanks for listening.